David was tired, really tired, after spending 12 hours at the community center helping families find housing. All he wanted was to go home and sleep. But as he walked down the quiet street toward his apartment, something caught his eye. There was a girl sitting on the sidewalk outside the old grocery store. She looked young, maybe early 20s, with long dark hair that seemed to shimmer under the street lights. What made him stop wasn't just that she was alone at this hour, but the way she was sitting. She kept looking up at the sky like she was waiting for something. David had seen many people on the streets during his work, but this girl was different. Her clothes were torn and dirty, but they had this strange quality to them. When the light hit them just right, they seemed to glow with tiny sparkles. He thought maybe it was just cheap fabric catching the light. "Hey," he said softly, not wanting to scare her. "Are you okay?" The girl turned to look at him, and David felt his breath catch. Her eyes were the most unusual color he'd ever seen. They were purple, but not like colored contacts. They seemed to have depth to them, like looking into deep water. "I am fine," she said, but her voice was strange. She spoke each word very carefully, like she was thinking about it first. "It's pretty cold out here," David said, sitting down on the curb a few feet away from her. "Have you eaten anything today?" The girl studied him for a long moment. "You are concerned about me," she said. It wasn't a question, more like she was stating a fact that surprised her. "Well, yeah, nobody should be out here alone this late." David pulled out his phone to check the time. It was almost midnight. "There's a diner down the street that's still open. Want to get something warm to eat?" The girl seemed to consider this very seriously. "Food," she repeated, like she was testing the word. "Yes, I would accept this food." As they walked to the diner, David noticed more odd things about her. She jumped slightly every time a car passed by, and she kept glancing at the sky. When they reached the diner, she stopped at the door and examined it carefully before going in. "I'm David, by the way," he said as they sat down in a booth. "I am called Kira," she replied, still speaking in that formal way. The waitress came over with menus, and Kira stared at hers like it was written in a foreign language. "What do you recommend?" she asked David. "The soup is good, and maybe some bread," David suggested. When the food came, Kira did something that made David's eyebrows raise. She picked up the spoon and examined it from every angle, like she'd never seen one before. Then she touched the soup bowl with her fingertip and pulled it back quickly, as if testing the temperature. "Is something wrong?" David asked. "No," Kira said, but she took a tiny sip first, then waited. After a moment, her eyes widened, and she began eating with an expression of wonder on her face. "This is very good," she said, sounding amazed. "Haven't you had soup before?" David asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Kira paused. "Not like this," she said quietly after they finished eating. David walked her back toward the area where he'd found her, but when they got there, Kira just stood looking lost. "Where are you staying?" David asked. "I do not stay anywhere," Kira said. "I move from place to place." "What about the shelter downtown?" "They have beds and no." Kira's voice became sharp, almost fierce. "I will not go to those places. They watch you. They ask questions. They try to control you." David was surprised by the sudden change in her tone. "They're just trying to help people I do not trust." "Places like that," Kira said firmly. "I would rather be free out here than trapped in there." Something in her voice made David think she wasn't just talking about homeless shelters. There was real fear there, like she was running from something. "Look," David said before he could stop himself, "I've got a couch at my place. It's not much, but it's warm and safe, just for tonight." Kira stared at him for a long moment. "Why would you do this for me? You do not know me." "Because everybody deserves a safe place to sleep," David said simply, after what felt like forever. Kira nodded. "I accept your offer, but I have rules." "Rules?" "I sleep by the window. I do not answer questions about where I come from, and if I choose to leave, you do not try to stop me." David thought this was a bit odd, but he nodded. Fair enough. His apartment was small but clean. Kira walked around it slowly, touching things like she was learning about them. She spent a long time looking at his television, then at his microwave, running her fingers along their surfaces. "You can shower if you want," David offered. "I'll find you some clean clothes. Shower." Kira looked confused. "To get clean. Hot water?" David gestured toward the bathroom. "Ah," Kira said. "Yes, I understand now." While she was in the bathroom, David heard strange sounds. It sounded like she was talking to herself, but in a language he didn't recognize. When she came out, her hair was clean and shiny, and she looked younger somehow. David had set up the couch with blankets and a pillow, but Kira ignored it. Instead, she went to the window and sat on the floor next to it, looking out at the night sky. "The couch is more comfortable," David said. "I prefer to be here," Kira said without taking her eyes off the stars. "Are you waiting for something?" David asked. Kira was quiet for so long that David thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she said, very softly, "I'm waiting to go home." "Where's home?" "Very far away," Kira said. "Farther than you could imagine." David wanted to ask more questions, but something in her voice told him not to push. Instead, he went to his bedroom and tried to sleep. But he kept thinking about the strange girl in his living room, and the sad way she'd said those words, around 3 in the morning. He woke up to a soft humming sound. He crept to his bedroom door and looked out. Kira was still by the window, but now she was holding his broken radio. The humming was coming from the radio, which was somehow working perfectly even though it had been dead for months. As David watched, Kira set the radio down and pressed her hand against the window. For just a moment, he could have sworn he saw a soft light glowing around her fingers. Then she turned and saw him watching. Their eyes met across the dark room, and David saw something in her expression that made his heart race. It wasn't fear or anger. It was the look of someone who had been carrying a secret for a very long time. "Go back to sleep, David," Kira said softly. "Tomorrow will bring new questions." And somehow, David knew that his life had just changed forever. David woke up the next morning expecting to find his couch empty. He figured Kira would have left during the night like most people do when they're running from something. But when he walked into the living room, she was still there, sitting by the window in the exact same position as before. "Did you sleep at all?" David asked, rubbing his eyes. Kira turned to look at him. "I rested," she said, which wasn't really an answer. Over the next few days, David learned that Kira had some very strange habits. She only slept for about 2 hours each night, always sitting up by the window. She would stare out at the sky for hours like she was watching for something specific. When David asked her about it, she would just say she was checking the patterns. "What patterns?" David would ask. "The way things move up there," Kira would reply, pointing at the sky. David worked at the community center during the day, and when he came home, he never knew what he'd find. Sometimes Kira would be gone for hours, and he'd worry about her. Other times, she'd be sitting at his kitchen table, taking apart his old appliances. "What are you doing?" David asked one evening, finding her with his broken toaster completely disassembled. "It was not working correctly," Kira said, not looking up from the small parts spread across the table. "Yeah, it's been broken for months. I was going to throw it out." "It is not broken," Kira said, touching one of the wires. "It was just confused." David watched in amazement as she put the toaster back together. When she plugged it in, it worked perfectly. Not just worked, but worked better than it ever had before. "How did you do that?" David asked. Kira shrugged. "I just listened to what it needed." This became a pattern. David would come home to find his old laptop running like new, his flickering lights steady and bright, even his ancient coffee maker brewing perfect coffee. Kira seemed to understand machines in a way that made no sense. "Where did you learn to fix things like this?" David asked one day. "I have always known," Kira said simply. But for all her strange abilities, Kira had huge gaps in basic knowledge. She didn't know how to use a can opener. She had never seen a television show before and spent an entire afternoon staring at a cooking program like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. She didn't understand money or why people needed jobs. Everyone has to work to survive. David explained one morning over breakfast. But why? Kira asked. There's enough for everyone. Why do some people have much and others have nothing? David tried to explain economics and society. But Kira just looked confused and a little angry. Your system is broken, she said finally. Where I come from, we share what we have. And where is that exactly? David asked. Kira went quiet and turned back to the window. Very far away, she said. Like always, the strangest thing about living with Kira was how she reacted to certain things. She would freeze up completely when planes flew overhead, staring at them with fear in her eyes. She refused to go near the hospital when David suggested she should see a doctor. She wouldn't let him take her picture, and she got nervous whenever they passed police officers on the street. They're just doing their jobs, David said when Kira grabbed his arm and pulled him away from a routine traffic stop. People in uniforms asked too many questions, Kira said, her voice tight with worry. What are you running from? David asked gently. I'm not running, Kira said. But her eyes said something different. I'm just waiting. David's neighbors started to notice strange things too. Mrs. Peterson from upstairs complained that her radio kept picking up weird signals. Mr. Chen from next door mentioned that his satellite dish was acting up. The building's elevator had started working perfectly for the first time in years. Ever since that girl moved in with you, the whole building's been different. Mrs. Peterson told David in the hallway. Not bad different, just different. David didn't know what to say to that. The most unsettling thing happened about a week after Kira arrived. David woke up in the middle of the night to find his bedroom filled with a soft blue light. He got up quietly and looked into the living room. Kira was sitting by the window as usual, but this time she was holding her hands up to the glass and light was coming from her palms. David blinked hard, thinking he was dreaming. But when he looked again, the light was still there. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and seemed to be responding to something outside. Then the light faded, and Kira lowered her hands. She turned and looked directly at David, even though he was hidden in the shadows. You're awake, she said softly. What was that? David whispered. Nothing important, Kira said, but her voice was sad. Go back to sleep. David wanted to ask more questions, but something in her tone made him retreat to his bedroom. He lay awake for hours, thinking about what he'd seen. The logical part of his mind said it was impossible, that he must have been dreaming. But the other part, the part that had watched Kira fix his broken appliances with just a touch, wasn't so sure. The next morning, David tried to act normal, but he kept watching Kira for signs of whatever he'd seen the night before. She seemed quieter than usual, more distant. When he asked if she was okay, she just nodded. I may need to leave soon, she said suddenly while they were eating lunch. David felt his heart sink. Why? I have stayed in one place too long, Kira said. It is not safe. Safe from what? Kira looked at him with those strange purple eyes. From people who would not understand what I am. And what are you? David asked, though he wasn't sure he was ready for the answer. Kira was quiet for a long moment. Someone who does not belong here, she said finally. Someone who should not have stayed as long as I have. David reached across the table and touched her hand. Her skin was always cold, he'd noticed, but now it seemed almost freezing. You belong here as much as anyone, he said. This is your home now. Kira looked at their joined hands and smiled sadly. You are very kind, David. But home is not a place you choose. It is a place that chooses you. That night, David pretended to sleep but kept one eye on the living room. Sure enough, around midnight, that soft blue light appeared again. This time, he crept closer and saw something that made his blood run cold. Kira wasn't just making light. With her hands, she was making shapes in the air, like she was writing in a language made of pure energy. And as she wrote, the light grew brighter, reaching toward the window like it was trying to get out, like it was trying to go home. David backed away quietly, his mind racing. Whatever Kira was, wherever she came from, it wasn't anywhere on Earth. And somehow, he was the only one who knew her secret. The question was, what was he going to do about it? 3 weeks had passed since Kira first came to stay with David, and their lives had settled into a strange but comfortable routine. David would wake up to find breakfast already prepared, made with ingredients he didn't even know he had. Kira had a way of making simple food taste amazing, though she never seemed to eat much herself. "You don't have to cook for me," David told her one morning, watching her make eggs that tasted better than anything he'd ever had at a restaurant. "I like to be useful," Kira replied. But there was something in her voice that made David think she was really saying something else, like she was trying to earn her place somehow. David had started bringing Kira to work with him sometimes. She was incredible with the families who came to the community center looking for help. She could calm crying children with just a look, and she had this way of understanding what people needed, even when they couldn't explain it themselves. "How do you do that?" David asked after watching Kira help an elderly man who'd been struggling to fill out housing forms. She hadn't just helped him write. She'd somehow known exactly what he was trying to say. "I listen," Kira said simply. "Not just to words, but to what people really mean." Mrs. Rodriguez, who ran the center, was amazed by Kira's abilities. "She's like a natural counselor," she told David. People trust her immediately. But David noticed that Kira never talked about herself with the people they helped. She would listen to their problems, offer solutions, but if anyone asked her questions, she would quietly change the subject. The strange occurrences around the building were getting harder to ignore. The ancient heating system had started working perfectly, keeping everyone warm even though winter was getting colder. The fluorescent lights that used to flicker constantly now gave off a steady, pleasant glow. Even the old computers in the resource room ran faster than they had in years. "It's like the whole place has been upgraded," Mrs. Rodriguez said, looking round the main room. "But we didn't change anything." David caught Kira's eye across the room. She was helping a young mother with her baby, but she'd heard Mrs. Rodriguez's comment. For just a moment, David saw something that looked like guilt flash across her face. That evening, David decided to ask her directly, "Kira, are you doing something to the building?" She looked up from the book she was reading, one of David's science textbooks that she'd been going through like it was a children's story. "What do you mean? The heating, the lights, the computers, they're all working better since you started." Coming there, Kira set down the book and walked to the window. "Sometimes things just need someone to understand them," she said. "That's not an answer. It is the only answer I can give you right now." David was getting frustrated with her mysterious responses, but before he could say anything else, Kira suddenly tensed up. She pressed her face against the window, staring up at the sky. "What is it?" David asked, moving to stand beside her. "Do you see that?" Kira pointed at what looked like a normal airplane moving across the night sky. "It's just a plane." David said no, Kira said, and her voice was tight with fear. "It is not." David looked harder. The aircraft did seem to be moving strangely, almost like it was searching for something. As they watched, it circled back over their neighborhood twice before disappearing into the distance. "Kira, what's going on?" David asked, but Kira had already moved away from the window. "I need to leave," she said suddenly. "Tonight." "What?" "Why they are looking for me," Kira said, moving around the apartment like she was gathering invisible things. "I have stayed too long. I have been too careless. Who's looking for you?" Kira stopped and looked at him. In the lamplight, her purple eyes seemed to glow. "People who would not understand what I am," she said. "People who would want to study me, or use me, or worse." David felt his heart racing. "Kira, what are you?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down on the couch and looked at him with an expression that was both sad and determined. "I am not from here, David," she said slowly. "Not from this city, not from this country, not from this world." David felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said." Kira held up her hand, and that soft blue light began to glow round her fingers. "I come from very far away, farther than you could travel. In a lifetime." David stared at the light, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "You're saying you're—" "Yes," Kira said simply, "and now they have found me." As if to prove her point, the lights in the apartment began to flicker. Not the normal flicker of old wiring, but in a pattern, like a signal. "We need to go," Kira said, standing up. "Now, go where?" David asked, still trying to wrap his head around what she'd told him. "Away from here." "Away from you?" Kira's voice broke slightly. "I should never have stayed. I should never have let you get close to me. But I want to help you," David said. "You cannot help me with this," Kira said. "This is bigger than you can imagine." The lights flickered again, and this time David could swear he heard a low humming sound coming from outside. He looked out the window and saw that the strange aircraft was back, hovering silently above their building. "They know I am here," Kira whispered. David made a decision. "Then we leave together." "David, no. You do not understand what you are saying. I understand that you're scared and alone, and that I care about you," David said. "I understand that whatever you are, wherever you come from, you're still the person who's been living in my apartment and helping people at the community center." Kira looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You would do that, even knowing what I am?" "I don't care what you are," David said. "I care about who you are." The humming sound was getting louder. Through the window, David could see lights beginning to appear in the apartment building across the street. People were waking up, looking out their windows at the strange aircraft above. "We need to go now," Kira said, moving toward the door. "Before they realize you are involved." David grabbed his jacket and followed her out into the hallway. As they reached the stairs, he could hear his neighbors opening their doors, confused voices asking what was happening. "This way," Kira said, leading him toward the back exit instead of the front lobby. As they stepped out into the alley behind the building, David looked up and saw something that made his breath catch. The aircraft wasn't alone. There were three of them now, silent and dark against the night sky. "Who are they?" David asked. "People from my world," Kira said. "They have been searching for me for a long time." "Are they going to hurt you?" Kira looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "I do not know," she said. "But I know they will hurt you if they think you are helping me." David took her hand. It was cold as always, but now he could feel something else in her touch. Energy, like electricity, but gentler. "Then we better make sure they don't catch us," he said. For the first time since he'd known her, Kira smiled. Really smiled, not the sad half smile she usually gave him. "You are either very brave or very foolish," she said. "Probably both," David replied. They ran together into the night, leaving behind the only home David had ever known, chasing after a future neither of them could predict. David and Kira ran through the empty streets for what felt like hours. Every time they heard a sound from above, they would duck into doorways or hide behind parked cars. The mysterious aircraft seemed to be everywhere, searching with bright beams of light that swept across the city like giant flashlights. "Where are we going?" David asked as they caught their breath in an abandoned parking garage. "Away from populated areas," Kira said, her eyes constantly scanning the sky. "They will not want to be seen by too many people." "Who are they exactly?" David asked. "You said they're from your world, but you never told me what that means." Kira leaned against a concrete pillar, and for the first time since David had known her, she looked truly exhausted. "My world is very different from yours," she said. "We have technology you cannot imagine, but we also have problems you have never faced." "What kind of problems?" "War," Kira said simply. "Not like the wars you have here, but something much worse. A war that could destroy everything." David felt a chill run down his spine. "And you're involved in this war." "My father is," Kira said. "He is a leader of our people, and he makes decisions that affect millions of lives. I disagree with some of those decisions." "What kind of decisions?" Kira was quiet for a moment. "He wanted to use our technology to control other worlds, to make them serve our needs. He said it was necessary for our survival, but I believed it was wrong." "So you ran away?" "I spoke against him publicly," Kira said. "I tried to convince our people that there was another way. But when you challenge someone in power, there are consequences." "What happened?" He sent me away, Kira said, her voice barely above a whisper. He said it was for my own safety, but I knew the truth. I was an embarrassment to him, a problem he needed to solve. David moved closer to her. So you came to Earth, not by choice, Kira said. The ship I was traveling on was attacked. I managed to escape, but I crash-landed here. I have been hiding ever since, trying to figure out how to get home. Do you want to go home? Kira looked at him with those purple eyes that had first caught his attention. I thought I did, she said, but now I'm not sure. Before David could ask what she meant, they heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Not the silent aircraft from before, but regular cars with engines. Government agents, Kira said, her body tensing. They work with my people sometimes. What do they want? To capture me, Kira said. To study me and learn about my technology. David peered around the pillar and saw 3 black cars pulling into the parking garage. Men in dark suits got out, carrying devices that looked like advanced scanners. They're tracking you somehow, David whispered. Yes, Kira said. I have been trying to hide my energy signature, but every time I use my abilities, they get closer. The agents were moving methodically through the garage, sweeping their scanners back and forth. David could see they were getting closer to their hiding spot. We need to move, he said. But as they started to leave their hiding place, one of the agents spotted them. There, he shouted. Target acquired. David and Kira ran toward the exit, but more agents appeared, blocking their path. They were trapped. Kira of the 7th realm. One of the agents called out, You will come with us. I will not, Kira said, and David could see light beginning to glow round her hands. You don't have a choice, the agent said. Your father wants you home. My father sent me away. Kira said, her voice growing stronger. He made his choice. The situation has changed, the agent said. Your world is in danger. Your people need you. David saw confusion flash across Kira's face. What do you mean? The enemy has found your home world, the agent said. They are preparing to attack. Your father requires your help. That is impossible, Kira said. Our defenses are too strong. Not anymore, the agent said. They have new weapons, weapons that can break through any defense. David watched as Kira processed this information. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the war between her anger at her father and her love for her people, even if that is true. Kira said, I cannot help. I am here, and I have no way to get home. Yes, you do, the agent said, and he gestured toward the sky. David looked up and saw something that made his heart stop. A massive ship was descending through the clouds, bigger than any aircraft he had ever seen. It was beautiful and terrifying. At the same time, covered in lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Your father has come for you personally, the agent said. Kira stared at the ship, her face pale. He is here, on Earth. He arrived an hour ago, the agent said. He wants to speak with you. I will not go with you, Kira said, but her voice was shaking. You don't have to, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see a figure walking toward them from the shadows. It was tall and elegant, wearing clothes that seemed to be made of the same material as Kira's original outfit. But what caught David's attention were the eyes. They were the same unusual purple as Kira's, but older, sadder. Father, Kira whispered. The figure stopped a few feet away from them. Hello, my daughter, he said, and his voice was filled with both love and pain. Why are you here? Kira asked. Because I was wrong, her father said simply. Because I made a terrible mistake, and now our people are paying the price. What mistake? I thought I could protect you by sending you away, he said. I thought I could handle our enemies alone. But I was wrong about everything. David watched this reunion with fascination and fear. This was Kira's father, the leader she had rebelled against. But he didn't look like a tyrant. He looked like a parent who had lost his child. The enemy you warned me about, Kira's father continued. They were not just trying to conquer other worlds. They were trying to learn about them, to understand their weaknesses, and I gave them exactly what they needed by pushing you away. I don't understand. Kira said, You were the key, her father said. Your ability to understand other beings, to connect with them, to help them. That was what we needed to fight this enemy. But I was too proud to listen to you. David saw tears in Kira's eyes. So you came to bring me home? I came to ask you to come home. Her father said, not as my daughter who must obey, but as a leader who can help save our people. Kira looked at David, then back at her father. And if I refuse, then our world will fall, her father said, and it will be my fault, not yours. The parking garage was silent except for the distant hum of the massive ship overhead. David realized that this was the moment everything would change, whatever Kira decided. Their time together was ending. I need to think, Kira said. There is no time. Her father said gently, the enemy fleet will reach our world in 3 days. Kira closed her eyes, and David could see her struggling with the decision. When she opened them again, she was looking directly at him. What do you think I should do? She asked. David felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. I think, he said slowly, that you already know what you have to do. Kira stared at David for a long moment, and he could see the battle happening in her mind. Here was the person who had given her shelter when she had nowhere to go, who had accepted her despite all her strangeness, who had run away with her without asking questions. And here was her father, representing a world she had left behind, asking her to save millions of lives. You are right, she said finally, her voice steady. I do know what I have to do. She turned to her father. I will come with you, she said. But I have conditions. Her father raised an eyebrow. You are not in a position to make demands. Yes, I am, Kira said, and David heard the strength in her voice that he had come to know so well. You need me, remember. That means I get to choose how I help. Her father smiled slightly. Very well. What are your conditions? First, no more sending people away because you disagree with them, Kira said. If we are going to fight this enemy, we need everyone working together, not just the people who say what you want to hear. Agreed, her father said. Second, after we deal with this crisis, I want to establish a program to help other worlds that are in trouble, not to conquer them or control them, but to actually help them. Her father considered this. That would be expensive. Less expensive than a war, Kira said. Agreed, her father said again. And third, Kira said, glancing at David, I want to bring someone with me. David felt his heart skip a beat. Kira, no? I can't. You can, Kira said, turning to face him fully. You are the first person on this world who showed me kindness without wanting anything in return. You are the first person who made me feel like I belonged somewhere. I did not want to go back to my world without you. But I'm just a human, David said. I don't have any special abilities. I can't help you fight a war. You can help me remember why the war is worth fighting, Kira said. You can help me stay connected to what really matters. David looked at her father, who was watching this exchange with interest. Would that be okay with you? My daughter has already proven that she has better judgment than I do, her father said. If she believes you would be valuable to our cause, then I trust her judgment. David felt overwhelmed. An hour ago, his biggest concern was whether he would have enough vacation days to take Kira somewhere nice. Now he was being asked to leave Earth and travel to another world to help fight in an alien war. I need a minute, David said. We don't have much time, Kira's father said gently. The longer we stay here, the more attention we will attract from your world's governments. David nodded and walked a few steps away, trying to process everything. He thought about his life on Earth, his job at the community center, his small apartment, his quiet routine. It was a good life, but it was also a small one. Then he thought about Kira, how she had appeared in his life like a shooting star, bringing wonder and mystery and purpose. How she had changed not just his daily routine, but his entire way of seeing the world. If I come with you, David said, walking back to them. What would I do there? Whatever you want, Kira said. Help me build bridges between different worlds. Help me understand how to solve problems without violence. Help me remember what it means to care about individual people, not just populations. And if I want to come back to Earth someday, then you can, Kira's father said. This is not a prison sentence. It is an opportunity. David looked up at the massive ship hovering above them. Just days ago, he had been worried about fixing his broken toaster. Now he was being invited to travel to the stars. Okay, he said. I'll come with you. Kira's face lit up with joy. Really, David said. But I have one condition too. What is it? Kira asked. I want to come back to Earth sometimes, David said. To check on the community center, to make sure the people we were helping are okay, to remember where I came from. Of course, Kira said. I would like that too. Her father gestured toward the ship. Then we should go. We have a long journey ahead of us. As they walked toward a beam of light that descended from the ship, David felt a mixture of excitement and terror. He was leaving everything he had ever known to follow a girl he had met 3 weeks ago to fight in a war he didn't understand. But as they stepped into the light and began to rise toward the ship, David realized something important. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The ship was even more amazing on the inside than it had been from the outside. The walls seemed to be made of living light, and the air hummed with energy. Kira's father led them through corridors that stretched farther than seemed possible. Your world is beautiful, Kira said to David as they passed a large window that showed Earth shrinking below them. It's your world to now, David said, taking her hand. Yes, Kira said, smiling. I suppose it is. As they traveled through space toward Kira's homeworld, David learned more about the war they were going to fight. The enemy was a race of beings who consume other worlds. Not just their resources, but their very essence. They had been moving through the galaxy for centuries, leaving empty space behind them. But they have a weakness. Kira's father explained. They cannot understand cooperation. They only know how to take, not how to share or work together. That's why you need Kira. David said, understanding. Yes, her father said. She understands both our people and yours. She can help us find a way to unite different worlds against this threat. The journey took several days, and David spent the time learning about Kira's world and its people. They were not so different from humans, he discovered. They had families and dreams and fears. They laughed and cried and hoped for better futures for their children. When they finally arrived at Kira's home world, David was amazed by what he saw. Cities that floated in the air, connected by bridges of light, forests of trees that sang in harmony, oceans that sparkle with bioluminescent life. It's incredible, David said. It is worth fighting for, Kira replied. The war, when it came, was unlike anything David could have imagined. But Kira was right about cooperation being the key to victory. By working together, by sharing their knowledge and their strengths, the Alliance of Worlds was able to defeat an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. And afterwards, true to her word, Kira established her program to help other worlds. She and David traveled throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as helpers, bringing aid to planets in need and building connections between different civilizations. They returned to Earth often, always together, always amazed by how much both worlds had to offer each other. David kept his promise to check on the community center, which had become a model for similar programs throughout the galaxy. Do you ever regret leaving? Kira asked him one evening as they watched the sunset from a cliff on her homeworld. David thought about it. No, he said finally. I regret all the years I spent thinking my life was too small to matter. But I don't regret following you to the stars, even though you could have had a quiet, peaceful life on Earth. Quiet and peaceful is overrated, David said, pulling her close. I'd rather have an extraordinary life with you than an ordinary life without you. Kira smiled and leaned against him. I love you too, she said. And as the stars came out above them, David realized that sometimes the best adventures begin with the simple decision to help someone who needs it. He had offered a homeless girl a place to sleep, and in return, she had given him the entire universe.